Good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Pearl Daily. I am your host, Pearl, and this is the Audacity Network. If you want to support my work, please go to theaudacitynetwork.com. We are currently demonetized on this channel, and YouTube does throttle us, so it's viewers like you that make this possible. There's two options. It's the $10 a month and the $80 a year. Both of those options will get you access to the chat, which I do read during the show. So if you want to super chat or even just put your comment in the chat, that is how you do it. And the money we make from that goes towards upping the set, flying in guests, and also doing our documentaries. So also please like the video on your way in. So today's topic, I asked you guys yesterday on my show if you wanted me to cover a new topic today or talk about the end of the video yesterday, which was a conservative commentator freaking out about the red pill. Now, the interesting thing is women will always tell men that they want them to open up about their issues. But whenever men open up about their issues, women fire back and say that it's not a problem. Millions of men across the country and even from other countries around the world have said that marriage is a bad deal for men, modern women are not wives, and that divorce court is stacked against them. And instead of saying, you know what, that's a terrible problem, and listening to the men, what I see women tend to do is gaslight them and say that these problems are not real. So let me pull up the end of, we did the first half yesterday. So if you want to see that, go to the live stream yesterday. But the second half of this interview. Now, Hannah Cox is a conservative commentator, and she brought on a divorce lawyer to back up that it's not women divorcing men, and the court system is just completely fair and not stacked against men.
Dad getting the kids, because that's
Is it on? Okay.
time where she doesn't have to be on 100%. That's time where she's not having to financially support the kids. So I would say generally, I mean, if you're a good person, like a genuinely good person, no skeletons in the closet, nothing that is going to be painful to talk about in cross examination, you're going to get pretty close, somewhere over 30%, around 50%, if that's what you're going for.
Yeah, I mean, it seems my anecdotal experience looking out in the world is it seems like more and more men are pushing to get custody, and that when they do, they're given it. And my spidey senses kind of tend to go off when I hear them.
So this is what happens. The men say, hey, this isn't fair. This is a problem. And most men in this country suffer in silence. Men are not ones that have a tendency to complain. So when men say that there's a problem, it's a real problem. So when men say that the court system is completely stacked against them, and millions of men say that they could not get custody of their children, you know, we reveal our true nature when we come out and we don't believe them.
And claiming like, oh, I couldn't get my kids. She's keeping my kids from me. And I not to say that I don't think there's some bitter bio moms out there. For sure there are. But it does seem like the law has adapted a good bit to where unless there's like a pretty credible claim against you for some reason, it seems pretty difficult to have a scenario where the woman can just like divorce you for no reason, take the kids for no reason, and prevent you from accessing them.
Yes, I would agree with that. As a generality, there are exceptions to everything we're talking about. But yes, I agree with that as in general, that's exactly correct.
So when it comes to child support, like obviously that is something that you hear a lot of men complaining about. And I like that you brought up how it could be a lot of money out of your paycheck and still not be a lot of money to supplement that child. I did an
Yes.
episode on daycare
Yes.
cost a few months ago, and it's very similar, right? Where it's like you
Yes.
look at the amount of money people are having to pay for daycare and it's astronomical. But then you think, would I take somebody else's kid for 8, 9 hours a day for that amount? Heck no. It's not that much money. That would not make it worth it in
No.
my book. So it's very similar in that way. I mean, what about how much do you see? Is there like an average that most people pay when it comes to child support, or is it sort of all over the map based on income?
So it is absolutely based on income. In Tennessee, there's actually a an Excel spreadsheet. You can Google Tennessee child support guidelines, and you can go to the link and you can download the spreadsheet. Um, I actually don't know what the formula is. I'm just used to punching in the information and it spits out an answer. But um, it looks at the amount of time, the number of days that a parent gets. It's looking at the number of kids there are. It's looking at the income of both parents. And at the end, it kind of spits out a number as to what does the state think is a fair child support payment for the spouse.
So he is correct that this is a calculator, but remember, the child support calculator punishes men for doing the right thing hypothetically. Now, right and wrong, it's going to depend on your worldview. But we can all agree that it's very generous for a man to want his wife to stay home with the kids. That's a very generous, kind thing to do. And the issue is the women are awarded more money when that happens. And while it's not a gendered law, so to say, women don't tend to marry men that don't make enough money.
For one spouse to make to the other spouse. So you will sometimes see uh, you'll sometimes see one of the spouses try to negotiate in bad faith. So they'll ask for 50-50 and with the intention of never or rarely exercising custody. Or they'll come in and they'll try to hide what their income is. Something you see a lot is guys will quit their pretty good paying jobs, take a $30,000 a year reduction in salary, and not see a change in lifestyle.
I want to first thank Paul. You just got a year membership. We really appreciate you. Woo! Thank you, Paul, on the website. So, second of all, we have to ask, why would men go to such extreme lengths to avoid child support to the point of quitting a high paying job? And what you come to find out is that child support is calculated before tax. So not only do men have to give up their salary, the way it's calculated is the woman is not paying tax on the money and the man is. So many men find that they've lost 80% of their income. It's not uncommon. And this is 18 years. Imagine losing 80% of your paycheck and looking at the next 18 years of your life. What would be your solution? Because if I'm going to have to work a high stress job to get rid of 80% of my paycheck, I might as well just go work something easy and enjoy life. This system ruins many good men to the point that many contemplate suicide because of this system.
So you have to assume at that point that they're working underneath the table. So anyway, at this formula spits out a number, and it's I don't see a typical child support payment. Um, I just see whatever that number is.
And do you guys, I mean, does this go through you if somebody doesn't pay their child support? How is that something that you come across? I feel like statistically I hear about it a lot, but I'm curious on the
Yes,
ground, like if that's something that,
yes, and that can trigger a number of things. So if you are owed child support and you're not receiving child support, you can sue them, and that would be a breach of contract. It's also a court file. Dang it, getting my words mixed up. It's a contempt of court. So when you get a contempt of court, you can catch a fine. You can also catch jail time, and you're going to be ordered to pay it. And in some types of contempt, and this is one of them, you can be held indefinitely until you're not in contempt. So if somebody owes, let's say, yeah, oh yes. So somebody's gets held. I don't know. Let's say they're $20,000 behind. They'll get arrested and placed in jail for contempt, and they will have a bond set for I don't know, $5,000, something to kind of make a major payment towards this, and they don't get out until they come up with that money. And it's never ceased to astonish me how very broke people are able, can't rub two pennies together, but all of a sudden they're in jail. They're able to come up with some money. So that's one thing that you could see. You can also see garnishments.
So we
People, and
had we
frankly,
had one man on the channel. Imagine this. Imagine he was paying $10,000 a month in child support. He just got out of a divorce where the woman took over $1 million, and he still got contempt of court because he couldn't make his payment immediately. And he had just given his wife $1 million. Is that not enough to raise? I think they had 2 kids, maybe 3. I don't know. One in the chat. Could you guys raise a couple kids for $1 million? Could you do it? I don't know. One person in the chat says 70% of men in homeless shelters are men. Pretty much tell men to do better, even when we protect and provide. The other thing is many men that are homeless because they've gotten so behind on their child support payments, they don't see the point of getting a job. They literally don't see the point. We had one guy on the show who told me that he would go to homeless shelters and see how many men had had access to the family court system within the last 5 years. According to his research, 70% of the men in homeless shelters were there because of family court. This is a deep issue, right? And what they keep doing is they keep saying it's not an issue. It's gaslighting. And the thing is, again, as women, we don't want to be pandered to. I mean, we do, but right. But when you start to wake up as a woman, you realize you don't want men lying to you 24/7. And that's what this is. It's pandering. There's no way this guy has worked in the court system for 9 years and doesn't know this stuff. He's not trustworthy, but he's pandering to future clients.
people get garnished all the time on their wages to pay child support. You can see some asset seizures. So I got a friend, another attorney, who was able to seize a fishing boat because dad was behind. So they got a lien against the fishing boat. He ignored it, and he went out one day to find his fishing boat was gone. So it's stuff like that could happen. But actually, where I see people trying to get around paying child support is where they come in and they try to game that formula. They come in and say, "Judge, I took a $30,000 hit to my income. Okay, and I need to pay less." Um, and in instances like that, a judge can find that somebody's willfully underemployed, which means that the judge says, "I think you can make 80. Just because you're making 50 doesn't mean that I'm going to take money away from your kids. So I'm going to leave child support alone. You can figure out how to find the extra money to pay for this." Often solves the problem. Um, yes, and if somebody's completely unemployed, at least in Tennessee, there is under statute, um, or well, I can't remember statute, but under the law, there is the court can basically act as if you're making a certain amount. It's like 32,000 for men, for women, $35,000 for men, and that's the number they put in for those child support payment calculations. And again, the judge is saying you're an able-bodied human.
Do you know what's a crazy law? So in the state of California, if you, I can't remember what age it is. I have to go back to my notes, but I want to say over the age of 5 or 6, if you find out that the child is not yours, you are still on the hook for child support until the kid is 18, because the way the law is written, it is in the best interest of the child. And because you signed the birth certificate, even if it was fraud, you are still on the hook for child support. So imagine being in the position where a woman frauded you and she can still throw you in jail if you do not pay your child support payments. This stuff is ridiculous. Um, yeah, and they still have the audacity to say that there's no bias in the system.
You can go out there and you can earn this amount of money. So you have to pay as if you're making that money, and you have to figure out how you're going to earn the money to pay it. Good luck to you. And, they're gone.
I like that. I support that actually.
Yeah,
On the
I
other
do too.
side,
Of course. Oh my goodness. Okay, let me get this straight. So, if a woman chooses to reproduce, now remember, ladies, I want to, for the women that are waking up and starting to see all of this pandering around us 24/7. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Do we have agency? Are we responsible for procreating with a man without a job? Or that's irresponsible? Why should we, as adults that can make fully functioning decisions, why should we make a homeless man or an unemployed man pay child support if we picked to have a baby with him? Now, I'm pro-life, but many women aren't. And legally, you can still go get an abortion. I mean, these days, you have like 6 months to do it. There's a million forms of birth control. There's so much stuff to prevent pregnancies with men that are not fit to be fathers. So why are we... Why are they treating us with kid gloves? If you decide to go get pregnant by an irresponsible man, that's on you because you're an adult. We're not kids. We're an adult. We're adults.
side of the
I do too.
coin, like
And even this conservative commentator, this drives me nuts. Even the conservative woman still treats women like children. I don't know why I'm demonetized, really. I'm the one saying that we're adults. I'm the one saying, hey guys, we don't need to be treated like children. We're adults. And I'm the one that's demonetized here. It's so crazy.
so alimony gets brought up a lot, right? And this is
Yes.
another thing where I often hear men be like, women just want to marry you to divorce you so they can take all your money. And I'm sitting here thinking, one, the vast majority of you don't have any money. Americans are in debt. Most households have two people working. There is no money to take, and I don't think most people are having to pay alimony at all, right? And if they do, it's pretty for a pretty short time period.
Yes. I've only seen alimony in about 3 or 4 cases, again, in my entire career. Um, I'm not an expert on this, and the concept of alimony, like, there are entire law school textbooks written about this.
In California, you can get lifetime alimony. And again, the way that men will look at this, it's not that every woman will. There are good women out there that will not take you to the cleaners, but it's that every woman can. And even good women, I've seen women that were housewives with 7 children that were good wives for 15 years decide one day they get into the wrong friend group. They maybe feel like they missed out on their youth. Whatever the reason is, they change. They change their mind. And we have a court system that will assist us and pay us to change our minds.
But to oversimplify, there are kind of two broad categories of alimony. In one, you will often see, like, there's either the parties, one of the spouses doesn't want to sell a house or liquidate a business, so there's not as much money to liquidate and pay out both spouses. So instead, the spouse who's holding on to the asset will pay it to the other spouse over time. So think of it almost like a mortgage or a loan payment for the right to keep this marital asset. And then that's always by agreement, and it's structured that way just because it's the easiest way to handle that without a liquidation sale. Um, in the other instance, where there's alimony, is basically where one of the spouses is at an economic disadvantage. That could be a stay-at-home mom who, has been at home for the last 15, 20 years, didn't have a career. Their college degree or whatever licensure they had is out of date, and they can't just walk out the front door one day and get a job, at least something that would support that spouse in the style that they were accustomed to living. So, generally speaking, these types of alimony, either there's a set amount that gets paid, or it's a set amount that's either the payment and the number of payments are set and it sticks to that. There are very few occasions where long term or lifelong alimony is imposed on anybody. In my personal life, I know of several instances where that was put in place by agreement, but it was not. Had they gone to trial, that would not have been ordered.
So, given that factor, what's really happening in the aftermath of divorce? Who's actually faring?
So now what she's trying to say, no, men, no, 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 your problem isn't real. It's gaslighting. It's gaslighting 101. These are the same women that tell you to open up to them. This is how they respond.
Better, what does the economic picture look like for people a couple years out?
Um, in the short term, I would say that the women ex-wives tend to have it rougher than ex-husbands. I think
Now, why is that? Why would women, I want us to think this through, okay? Why would women have it rougher than ex-husbands? I'm gonna listen to this, but I want us to think about this, all right?
emotional weight of this hits them a lot sooner. Um, I think for men, regret tends to age and expand as time passes. Um, um, Oftentimes, the husband is usually in starts off in better economic shape than the woman does. Just again for various reasons. Certainly,
The various reasons being, even though we make less money, we spend more. We make less than men, and we make 80% of consumer buying decisions. There is a reason we never had credit cards, okay, guys? There's a reason they didn't let us have bank accounts because now we own 80% of the world's debt. That's why we fare worse economically, because even if we have more money, even if they give us child support, we still have a tendency to spend it and get into debt.
she has children. That's going to get in the way of her ability to build a career. I say get in the way. I probably should say impact her ability to launch a career, especially a little bit later in life.
Hmm.
So over time, though, women tend to do the work, the emotional work of recovering from a divorce. I used to, I used to, no matter who my client was, tell them this is traumatic. Even if this is a really smooth divorce, even if y'all don't hate each other, even if y'all end on good terms, this is traumatic. Talk to a therapist. And
Good.
uh, that is something that I still tell all my clients that I usually say it once or twice to my female clients. I usually hammer it with my male clients because I've got a not a great divorce case right now where my client has a really solid network of girlfriends and sisters and cousins and a really solid mom. She doesn't need therapy. She just needs to talk to one of them on the phone for a little bit every day. She seems to be doing fine. But, men, we tend to think that the way to go through life is with these gaping emotional wounds.
Men are 9 times more likely to commit suicide after a divorce. Does that sound like better?
So it doesn't get handled. And I often see women take the lessons that they learned from a first failed marriage into a second marriage. Uh, with men, not all the time. Plenty of men do the emotional work. Very often, I see men go in and reinvent the wheel on their second marriage, and no, not reinvent the wheel. It's the wrong one to use. They will um, repeat history, where they will do everything
Hmm.
wrong that they did in the first marriage, and they'll be surprised when it fails again, or the same issues arise again. Um, and it's Einstein's definition of insanity. Um, and the majority of the time, their response is, "Women, man, what can you do?" Uh, and I've got an answer to that
Oh,
question. They never like that.
do you find that men or women tend to like remarry faster or move on faster? I mean, it seems like, again, this is a statistic versus like, actual experience, but it seems like women are actually less likely to remarry or move on if they have a husband die, even, whereas men do mostly tend to remarry and do it quite quickly. It seems like, I think the average is something like 2 to 3 years. Most divorced men are remarried, I want to say, which seems really fast.
Yeah, yeah. So I would say this. I hadn't thought about this, so this is interesting. The majority of the time, when it's the man who's pulling the trigger on the divorce, either he has it in his head that without a wife, he's going to go get to do the swinging bachelor lifestyle and just go play the field. And that, in my experience, especially the older men,
Oh, we love divorced dads. Let's just call it 100, ladies. We love a man with a kid. Let's not I'm not saying every guy gets to go be a bachelor, but if he goes to the gym, he's not completely wrecked in the divorce. That's an option. And the thing is, they try to convince men that this isn't an option because it removes power from women, right? If men think that a bachelor life with a bunch of hot young women is attainable, well, they might be much more likely to file. But that's why you see a lot of women and even men at times convince them that this isn't possible.
get that burns them out after a year or two. So yeah, that'd be about the time they'd be looking to get back into domesticity again. Um, or and I'll probably the majority of the time when the man pulls the trigger, there's someone else. Um, but in 100% of the time, there's something else. He's got some idea that he can be happy or sated or whatever outside of the marriage in something else. Yeah, again, as far as women go, they tend to. I would say the majority of them take a once bitten, twice shy approach to this. So they are again doing the emotional work, and part of the emotional work is figuring out why didn't I see this coming. Um, if you sit there and again go find the average guy. I'm not saying the thoughtful, sensitive guy, but the average guy and ask, why did your marriage fail? And, he'll sit there and he'll pay lip service. I could have been better about some things, but man, I just walk in the door and it'd be one thing after another. And to them, the reason the marriage failed is because there was some problem with their wife. You ask them, okay, so what are you looking for this next time around to not end up with the same type of woman? And it's crickets. Talk to the average woman about 2 or 3 years post divorce. Probably not right after, certainly not right after, maybe not for the first couple of years. Um, she'll tell you why it went wrong and you'll get almost like a doctoral thesis on what killed that marriage. So,
Yeah.
and a huge part of
What
that
tracks?
is yeah. So, um, they're talking about red flags that they missed, and I've got
But notice it's not where they could improve, it's red flags we missed, right? And what one of my most viral tweets was? I tweeted out the steps of a marriage, of the average marriage in America in 2024. And one of those is what I've heard from many men is after the wedding, after they get engaged, or after the first kid, the sex stops. And many men fear marriage because they've heard from all of their friends that if they get married, the sex will stop. So, what is the incentive? Like, if we want men to marry us, there has to be some incentive, especially if we want them to do it with the state. So, what does a man get out of marriage that he doesn't get out of a live in girlfriend? What is the benefit?
younger sister who is a single woman living in Virginia, and she talks about some of the best counselors for relationship advice are women slightly older than her, and she's got some good friends that she's gone to for advice in terms of who went through a divorce, and they're sitting there talking about what went wrong, and the ones who didn't go through a divorce are sitting there talking about what went wrong, how they overcame it, and their advice for success. So um, yeah, I hadn't, and I actually, this is not something I thought about before, but that's you raise a very good.
Well, I'm gonna throw you another curveball, and this is obviously very much just opinion based. But would you say most divorces should happen, or do you think that people give up too easily, and that yes, there's problems with the other person. There's problem. I mean, one thing I can say with less than a year of marriage under my belt is marriage is very revealing of your own flaws. Like it's like constantly having a mirror that you are having to look into and have your worst parts reflected back. And so, I think even the best marriages can be very challenging in that way. But my parents have been married over 40 years. I have a long legacy of long marriages in my family throughout aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents. And, I accept marriage is hard. And I accept that there are times where you hear stories where you're like, no, that person absolutely had every right to leave and should have left. And, that's valid. But I also feel like our culture has really lost the spine and gumption that is required for two people to consistently show up for each other and just decide to make it work and decide to accept challenges as they come as a way to improve themselves and strengthen their bond. I mean, and again, this is totally opinion based, but looking at the number of cases you've dealt with, do you often feel like, man, these people really should be able to work this out?
Yes, I would say the majority. Now, I've got two cases right now where pretty severe abuse is present. So I'm not going to look at her and go, just you need to work this out. Um, but I think I said earlier that the leading
Is it real abuse? And this is the problem. We keep changing the definitions of these words. So when he says severe abuse, I don't know what that means. Is that hitting? Is that financial abuse? Is that emotional abuse? What is it?
cause of divorces that I see is discontentment on the part of one or the other of the spouses. Um, I think that the concept that the grass is greener on the other side kills a tremendous number of divorces, and the reality almost never measures up to that. So I think probably the spouse that is doing this the most is the man who is dreaming about some wonderful future without his current wife, where he's happy, he's sated, and he's got no problems because he's got somebody in his life who's cleaning up after him and sleeping with him. Um, the reality almost never manifests itself, and I think that if most people who are in that position where they're just dealing with discontentment, the marriage can be saved if they're willing to work through that. And, you know, I often get asked what you asked, which is, do women, initiate 80% of the divorces? And again, I don't know the answer to that particular statistic, but what I do see is you get men who they're usually the ones to raise the idea of divorce first, and they are usually the ones that call it quits on the
According to who? At the end of the day, we value actions, not words. It's one thing to say, I want to get a divorce. It's another thing to do it. Who filed? Who did it? People can say things, people say things all of the time. Who filed the paperwork? And again, that's where it's the same concept. It's plausible deniability. Well, I only filed because he was going to file, or he said he wanted a divorce, or he said he wasn't happy. No. We gotta stick to the facts. Who filed?
marriage saving steps. So couples counseling, therapy, going on date night more often, whatever.
Please don't ever go to therapy. I'm not saying there aren't sane therapists. There are some good ones, okay? But every woman I know that was trying to be a therapist in college, batshit. Crazy. I couldn't. I'll just keep going.
Whatever that is. And they go, this is just too hard. And, I have had clients, about 2 or 3 clients come in over the course of my practice who have basically said, I can't do this anymore. And I don't, I don't, I don't moralize to my clients. It doesn't work. No one wants to hear it, but you know, I will ask there's been several occasions where I've asked these guys questions, and just kind of the end result. I'm at, and this is based on their previous answers. The question I've ended with is, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And they've sat with it, and they have said no, but I feel that I could be happier. Um, it's not that they're not even saying that they're unhappy. They could just be happier. Uh, and when I've asked more pressing questions, the source of their unhappiness is not their wife, it's not their kids, it's not their job. It is something internal to them. And because it's internal to them, they have the ability to strike at the root of that unhappiness and kind of work their way through it. And sometimes there are instances where the other spouse is doing something, and sometimes you gotta address that too. But um, sorry, that's a very long-winded way of where I could have
No.
just said
I mean,
no.
I think
But
that's very illuminating.
you're talking to a lawyer.
Yeah, I think it's very illuminating, and it's sad.
Okay. We're almost to the end of this. I think we've covered the majority. I want to talk about, because we see all these cases of men not getting custody, right? That's a common thing that we hear about. But what about when women don't get custody? So I've pulled up a couple articles to talk about when women, they don't get custody. I'm sure it's for also tough reasons, right? So there's an article from Forbes that talks about when women lose custody. Give me 1 second, guys. So Chicago mother, this is right in my home state of Illinois. Chicago mother loses custody of her daughter for insisting that her daughter is a girl. So again, we saw a clip yesterday. The man loses custody because his wife isn't happy. And the woman, they lose custody because they want to transition their child. Janette Cooper never imagined she'd lose custody of her child. The 44-year-old lifelong educator always considered herself a loving and responsible mother to her daughter, Sophia. But at when age 12, Sophia suddenly claimed to be transgender. Janette was skeptical Sophia had never exhibited signs of gender dysphoria. In fact, Sophia exhibited many more traditionally feminine behaviors and preferences than Janette ever had. To Janette, it didn't make sense. But Sophia insisted not only that she was trans, but that also she was unsafe around Janette. What followed was an almost catastrophic series of court proceedings and therapy sessions in which Janette's ex-husband's lawyers, therapists, and other individuals and institutions supposedly concerned with Sophia's best interests all work to erode Janette's basic parenting rights. Nearly 3 years later, Janette can't even visit the daughter she loves. She lives at less than 10 minutes away, but can only communicate with Sophia by mail. All because she insists that Sophia is a girl. Finally ready to tell her story, Janette is speaking out about how gender ideology has become the latest weapon in parental custody battles, severing one of the most fundamental bonds in life under the guise of protecting children. Part 1, what is a woman? Janette shaves half her hair, but not her legs, often doesn't wear bras, and purchases clothing regardless of whether they're sold in men's or women's departments. She jokes that if you subscribe to traditional gender stereotypes, she's the one who would think is transgender. But that's precisely how Janette raised her daughter, outside the confines of traditional sex stereotypes. I can't imagine why this woman lost custody. That sounds like the ideal mother. I mean, that seems right. I don't think that there are any bonds on what is meant to be female other than to exist in a female body. Janette, who lives in Chicago, says there's nothing I have to do to become female. I simply am. I can dress whatever way I want. I can cut my hair off, grow it long. I can change my clothes. I am still female. Any behavior that I have is female because it's mine. Janette doesn't care for political labels, but she considers herself a radical feminist and has voted Democrat in every election since she was 18. When addressing the discrepancy between her political beliefs and beliefs on sex and gender ideology, Janette responded, the difference between liberation and anarchy is a fine line. When Janette and her ex-husband divorced in 2015, the parenting agreement granted Janette custody of Sophia 6 days a week, 7 nights a week. While Janette admits that Sophia had a hard time with the divorce, she and her daughter were extremely close. Homeschooling for a period of time and bonding over board games, vacations to Six Flags, and their shared progressive politics. Why does a kid have a political opinion at 12? What is the purpose of that? So on July 22nd, 2019, when Sophia, the then 12-year-old, went on a regular custody visit to her father's house, Janette had no reason to suspect that Sophia would not come home. But at 8:30 p.m., when Janette arrived to pick up Sophia, her ex-husband refused to return Sophia to her custody. The next morning, Janette, for the first time, learned that Sophia identified as transgender and did not feel safe in her care. Janette could not understand why she would feel that way. Janette says that she always has made it clear to her daughter that she will accept her for who she is, but notes that she may have commented in Sophia's presence about news stories regarding teenagers who seek to transition, expressing her view that many of these kids need to just find a way to be comfortable in their bodies and find people who appreciated them for their unique personalities, not to identify outside of sex. After 8 days of her ex-husband violating their parenting agreement, Janette filed an emergency petition to have her daughter returned to her custody. Sophia's father responded in court documents alleging that due to burgeoning adolescence and awakening awareness of self, Sophia was no longer mentally or emotionally safe in her home. He asked for all the parenting time, all the decision-making authority and requested that the court prohibit Janette from seeing and communicating with Sophia unless he and a court-ordered child representative agreed. The court sided with Janette's ex-husband pending an investigation. Distraught and desperate to see her daughter, Janette put aside her beliefs and wrote to Sophia in a 3-page affirmation letter addressing her daughter's chosen name, Ash. I have forced my brain to accept the reality that was presented to me, Janette said. I thought that's what I was supposed to do. The letter not only failed to bring her daughter back, Janette was told that she shouldn't have written it at all. I didn't understand that. And that kind of woke me up to what was happening. Janette believed that Sophia's new stepmother, a licensed psychotherapist, had encouraged Sophia to separate from Janette. Little by little, piece by piece, Janette said her daughter's stepmother helped orchestrate a custody change under the auspice of saving Sophia. 3 years later, Sophia still presents as feminine as she always has, but goes by the name Ash using preferred pronouns. Under the temporary court order issued after Sophia first claimed to be transgender, Janette was only allowed to see her daughter if she attended reconciliation family therapy, which has a specific goal of reconciling an alienated child and parent. Janette said she was looking forward to it. The only thing she objected to was the requirement that her ex-husband's wife be included, which gave Sophia's stepmom access to everything that happened during family therapy, including Janette's private sessions with Sophia. Janette told the therapist she didn't consent to the arrangement, but according to Janette, the therapist said if Janette didn't consent, she wouldn't be able to see her daughter. I was told that if I didn't agree to have the stepmom there, then my child was refusing to see me, Janette said. I had no choice. I wanted to see her so badly. The therapy sessions were unsuccessful at reconciling the strained relationship. Despite that, she believed the nightmare would end soon. So remember, guys, men go through this all the time, and they don't get articles, written about it. But when a woman goes through it, except on my channel, right? So essentially, she wanted to transition her child, and the dad had a problem with that. And this is really what you get. This is crazy. This is insane. Yeah, can we stop telling women that they're all good, loving moms? It's just not true. It's not true. But anyways, guys, I just wanted to have a quick show today. So I think that's all I got for you guys today. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you like the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I'll talk. What? Oh, thank you for reminding me. Next week, we're switching to 3 o'clock. So I'll see you guys at 3 o'clock Central instead of 5 o'clock Central. Go to theaudacitynetwork.com to sign up. And I will see you next week.